Welcome to another episode of Sensible Reactions. What I have my personal knowledge and opinion on the laws, the universal laws, baby. We are live currently. The link in the description here is for when I go live. Okay, on the purple app, right there. Right there, you see it. All right. If you have enjoyed this series, or if this is your first time here, baby, please go back and, you know what I'm saying, look, I got a whole playlist on my channel, Sensible Reactions. If you want to see my good day talks, there's a whole playlist for you where you can get caught up, man. See what my vibe is. If you like my vibe while you're in this video, soon as you get a giggle, a laugh, or as soon as you have a okay moment, hit that like button. That's all I'm asking. And if you like, I want to come back, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you know what I'm saying, are reminded, because baby, it's so much going on. It is. So just as a reminder, if you would like to catch me live, I'm typically going live anywhere from possibly a Thursday evening, but typically anywhere from a Friday evening to early part of a Sunday. Okay. So those are the time frames when you probably would catch me live. If you go and subscribe, turn the notification bell on, you'll know exactly when I'm live. Okay, baby? All right, listen, we continuing on with our psychology crash course, okay, baby? Because we are in school, classes in session. You see the chalkboard back there. Let's go. Okay. Today, what we're going to talk about, we'll see in a minute. We'll see. Let's just see.
Or maybe teased your buddy by saying he has muscular dystrophy. Of course you have never done that, because you are not a terrible person. You'd never ever hear a really good joke about polio? Or made a casual reference to someone having hepatitis? Or maybe teased your buddy by saying he has muscular dystrophy. Of course you have never done that, because you are not a terrible person. You'd never make fun of someone for having a physical illness. But folks make all kinds of offhand remarks about people having mental illnesses and never give it a second thought. How often have you heard a person say that someone's psycho or schizo or bipolar or OCD? I can pretty much guarantee that the people who use those terms had no idea what they actually meant. We've talked about how psychological disorders and the people who have them have often been stigmatized, but at the same time, we tend to minimize those disorders, using them as nicknames for things that people do, think, or say that may not exactly be universal, but are still basically healthy. And we all do it, but only because we don't really understand those conditions. But that's why we're here, because as we go deeper into psychological disorders, we get a clearer understanding of their symptoms, types, causes, and the perspectives that help explain them. And some of the most common disorders have their root in an unpleasant mental state that's familiar to us all: anxiety. It's a part of being human, but for some people it can develop into intense fear and paralyzing dread, and ultimately turn into full-fledged anxiety disorder. Defining psychological disorders again: a deviant, distressful, dysfunctional pattern of thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that interferes with the ability to function in a healthy way. So when it comes to anxiety, that definition is the difference between the guy you probably called phobic because he didn't like Space Mountain as much as you did, and the person who truly can't leave their house for fear of interacting with others. It's the difference between the girl who's teased by her friends as being OCD because she does her laundry every night, and the girl who has to wash her hands so often that they bleed. Starting today, you're gonna understand all those terms you've been using.
Well, baby, I didn't have to do it to where it bleed, but girl, do they be ashy, girl. Just because of that reason, I wash them so much in the space between the time in the two. Yeah, they're okay today. They're right today. Now my face, cool, because I ain't gotta ever do not interacting with so much in comparison. Girl, so my OCD is like, it's mild. You know what I'm saying? I say I have mild OCD. You know, when it comes to specific things, just because I know how my body react, that's one thing. It used to be real bad though.
We commonly equate anxiety with fear, but anxiety disorders aren't just a matter of fear itself. A key component is... We commonly equate anxiety with fear, but anxiety disorders aren't just a matter of fear itself. A key component is also what we do to get rid of that fear. Say someone almost drowned as a kid and is now afraid of water. A family picnic at the river may cause that anxiety to bubble up, and to cope, they may stay sequestered in the car, less anxious but probably still unhappy while the rest of the family is having fun. So in clinical terms, anxiety disorders are characterized not only by distressing, persistent anxiety, but also often by the dysfunctional behaviors that reduce that anxiety. At least a fifth of all people will experience a diagnosable anxiety disorder of some kind at some point in their lives. That is a lot of us. So I want to start out with a condition that used to be categorized as an anxiety disorder, but is now considered complex enough to be in a class by itself: obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. You probably know that condition is characterized by unwanted repetitive thoughts, which become obsessions, which are sometimes accompanied by actions, which become compulsions. And it is a great example of a psychological disorder that could use some mental health myth busting. Being neat and orderly and fastidious does not make you OCD. OCD is a debilitating condition.
Correct. That is correct. That whole cause what I was seeing Back in the day when I looked up OCD to see what it actually meant, when you're going to the door to make sure it's locked, even though you already went and checked and it was locked. So I used to stay home by myself when I was younger. Single mother, she had to go to work, 12-hour shifts. Pretty much all of her jobs that she ever had was pretty much 12-hour shifts that I can recall. When I started to get a little bit older. And Buki. Girl. Certain things, and if y'all was in my live earlier, my first stream, I talked about kind of different things that you use to cope, to feel normal in this life. And that's also another part of that too. But anyway, if you'll get the correlation if you were there. Anyway, man. So I don't know if it was really OCD, right? And it's not only that either, right? Or if it was just anxiety. And I'm feeling like it was just anxiety. But it's not just that either. Like over time, throughout the years, there's certain things that just became like for real, like overly done. And I had to really simmer that down. That's just like checking the stove just to make sure it's off, right? It's those things. It just becomes it becomes so much of a worry to you that this can happen, that can happen, and this and that and that, and you literally become. And at a point, it stopped being outward and it became more so inward. And then eventually, I learned to just calm the fuck down because I can't control everything. You know what I'm saying? You're never going to get away from every little germ. You're never going to get away from every little thing. And you also have to learn to trust yourself as well, right? Because who came in the house and turned the stove back on after you just left? Yeah, I had a lot of things going on as a child that nobody really ever really paid attention to enough to you know, and some things didn't play out in front of people. Some things was hella internal. But boy, oh, pay attention to your kids, man. Pay attention to your kids, man. God dang it. Oh boy, the letters that I was writing, the like, it's just, it's not always just your kid being a kid. Some of it is things that you don't even realize that have happened, that have caused this level of anxiety or stress within your child. I need y'all to tap in, especially if you live in a life that's not one of ease, and your child is under some bit of stress. Okay, specifically as a single parent, no matter the gender, single parent, or no matter your sex, single parent, man. And you don't really have if you don't have the system like that family dynamic where you have a support system to really help, and they're of also a certain level here. Man, oh man.
Whose sufferers take normal behaviors like washing your hands or double checking that you turned off the stove and perform them compulsively. And they often use these compulsive, even ritualistic behaviors to relieve intense and unbearable anxiety. So soon they're scrubbing their hands every 5 minutes or constantly checking the stove or counting the exact number of steps they take everywhere they go. If you're still unclear about what it means for disorders to be deviant, distressful, and dysfunctional, OCD might help you understand. Because it is hard to keep a job, run a household, sit still, or do much of anything if you feel intensely compelled to run to the kitchen 20 times an hour. And both the thoughts and behaviors associated with OCD are often driven by a fear that is itself obsessive. Like if you don't go to the kitchen right now, your house will burn down and your child child will die, which make the condition that much more distressing and self-reinforcing. There are treatments that help OCD, including certain kinds of psychotherapy and some psychotropic drugs. The key here is that it is not a description for your roommate who cleans her bathroom twice a week, or the guy in the cubicle next to you who only likes to use green felt tip pens. And even though OCD is considered its own unique set of psychological issues, the pervasive senses of fear, worry, and loss of control that often accompany it have a lot in common with other anxiety disorders. The broadest of these is generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD. People with this condition tend to feel continually tense and apprehensive, experiencing unfocused, negative, and out-of-control feelings. Of course, feeling this way occasionally is common enough, but feeling it consistently for over 6 months, the length of time required for a formal diagnosis, is not. Folks with GAD worry all the time and are frequently agitated and on edge, but unlike some other kinds of anxiety, patients often can't identify what's causing the anxiousness, so they don't even know what to avoid. Then there's panic disorder, which affects about 1 in 75 people, most often teens and young adults. Its calling card is panic attacks, or sudden episodes of intense dread or sudden fear that come without warning. Unlike the symptoms of GAD, which can be hard to pin down, panic attacks are...
See, I never really had the panic attack situation. It was more so on the lines, kind of like the GID? GAD? Girl, what did they just say? Hold on, let's go back. Yeah, the GAD. That's probably the closest to what I can say. And to some degree, some parts of the OCD. And like I said, it kind of, throughout life, it kind of went, I had different periods of this happening until I'll be forever grateful for the year of 2019. I will be forever grateful for the year of 2019 because my life and my mental health and my entire existence changed. My goodness. And we really can, if everybody's kind of on the same mental wavelength in one way or another, you don't see the issue, you know, until you step out of it, until you start growing, until you start learning. Then you see there's a clear difference, bro. There's a clear difference in a mental, a stable mind in actions in a person. That's why now I can look at a person and see for sure, even when it's
which affects about 1 in 75 people, most often teens and young adults. Its calling card is panic attacks, or sudden episodes of intense dread or sudden fear that come without warning. Unlike the symptoms of GAD, which can be hard to pin down, panic attacks are brief, well-defined, and sometimes severe bouts of elevated anxiety. And if you've ever had one or been with someone who has, you know that they call these attacks for good reason. They can cause chest pains and racing heartbeat, difficulty breathing, and a general sense that you're going crazy or even dying. It's as awful as it sounds. We've talked a lot about the body's physiological fight or flight response, and that's definitely part of what's going on here, even though there often isn't an obvious trigger. There may be a genetic predisposition to panic disorder, but persistent stress or having experienced psychological trauma in the past can also set you up for these attacks. And because the attacks themselves can be downright terrifying, a common trigger for panic disorder is simply the fear of having another panic attack. How's that for a kick in the head? Say you have a panic attack on a bus, so you find yourself hyperventilating in front of dozens of strangers with nowhere to go to calm yourself down. That whole ordeal might make you never want to be in that situation again, so your anxiety could lead you to start avoiding crowded or confined places. At this point, the initial anxiety has spun off into a fear of anxiety, which means, welcome, you've migrated into another realm of anxiety disorder, phobias. And again, this is a term that's been misused for a long time to describe people who say don't like cats or are uncomfortable on long plane trips. Simply experiencing fear or discomfort doesn't make you phobic. In clinical terms, phobias are persistent, irrational fears of specific objects, activities, or situations that also, and this is important, leads to avoidance behavior. You hear a lot about fears of heights or spiders or clowns, and those are real things. They're specific phobias that focus on particular objects or situations. For example, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge in Maryland is a 7,000-meter span that crosses the Chesapeake Bay. If you want to get to or from eastern Maryland, that's pretty much the only way to do it, at least in a car. But there are thousands of people who are so afraid of crossing that bridge that they simply can't do it. So to accommodate this avoidance behavior, driver services are available. For $25, people with gyrophobia, a fear of bridges, can hire someone to drive themselves and their kids and dogs and groceries across the bridge in their own car while trying not to freak out. But other phobias lack such specific triggers. What we might think of as social phobia, currently known as social anxiety disorder, is
I know I had a friend for sure did not like crossing water on bridges. Girl. Girl. Yeah, when water was included. She did not. She would start literally panicking in the car. For real. Just hurry up, just hurry up, just hurry up, just hurry up, just go. I'm like, ma'am, you need to calm down because then you're going to give me anxiety. I'm like, just get a second, just, and you know what I mean? Because ain't nothing else I could do, baby. Nothing else. Like, if I could pick us up and fly, baby, we would have did that a long time ago. Okay, but I can't. So work with me. I work with you.
Characterized by anxiety related to interacting or being seen by others, which could be triggered by a phone call or being called on in class or just thinking about meeting new people. So you can probably see at this point how anxiety disorders are related and how they can be difficult to tease apart. The same thing can be said about what we think causes them. Because much in the same way that anxiety can show up as both a feeling, like panic, and a thought, like is my kitchen on fire, there are also two main perspectives on how we currently view anxiety, as a function of both learning and biology. The learning perspective suggests that things like conditioning, and observational learning, and cognition, all of which we've talked about before, best explain the source of our anxiety. Remember our behaviorist friend John B. Watson and his conditioning experiments with poor little Albert? By making a loud, scary noise every time he showed the kid a white rat, he ended up conditioning the boy to fear any furry object, from bunnies to dogs to fur coats. That conditioning used two specific learning processes to cement itself in little Albert's young mind. Stimulus generalization expanded or generalized his fear of the rat to other furry objects. The same principle holds true.
You know the weird part about that, man? People do that. Like, people traumatize their kids in that way. People really do. And you know, I was gonna say something, but it is though, technically. Technically it is though. You know what I'm saying? I feel like, yeah, you can help change that relationship a little bit maybe. But what I'm thinking about is, like, your kid is walking for the first time. And I know people have done this, multiple people. Using the vacuum cleaner. A lot of people used to be scared of the vacuum cleaner as a child. That noise, and then it's like it's chasing you. And the way it come on, it's not funny. The way it come on does not help the situation. You know, and they all look ugly. And they chasing you down, man. You know, with your family member behind it. You know what I'm saying? So I know some people who had a fear of the vacuum cleaner as a child. And then, of course, you learn how to walk, baby. You get up on them feet and get gone. You know what I'm saying? You know how the little babies be. The little babies be, get on down, baby. But yeah, that's yeah. That's a
Like
thing.
Your neighbor's mean parrot and subsequently fear all birds. But then the anxiety is solidified through reinforcement. Every time you avoid or escape a feared situation, a pair of fuzzy slippers or a robin on the street, you ease your anxiety, which might make you feel better temporarily. But it actually reinforces your phobic behavior, making it stronger. Cognition also influences our anxiety, whether we interpret a strange...
Because you feel like you actually escaped it when it was nothing really to escape. Furthering the psychological damage.
Noise outside as a hungry bear or robber or merely the wind determines if we roll over and keep snoring or freak out and run for a kitchen knife. And we might also acquire anxiety from other people through observational learning. A parent who's terrified of water may end up instilling that fear in their child by violently snatching them away from kiddie pools or generally acting anxious around park fountains and duck ponds. But there are also equally important biological perspectives. Natural selection, for instance...
Thank you for saying that. Listen, just because that is your trauma, don't make that your child's trauma. Shout out to my mama. Because my mama, when it comes to swimming and all of that, but for me, love it. Get in there and we get in there. You know what I'm saying? We having the time of our life. Baby, she'll get in the water now. She ain't scared to get in water. She gonna get in there and kick it and relax and but baby, when it comes to swimming and all that, even though she'd have been dunked underwater before, but baby, when it comes to swimming and learning how to swim, she's just not there yet. You know, I tried to teach her. My granddaddy float like it's nothing, and honey, my grandma, she didn't ever really get in the pool. But she was in the pool at the Y, so same thing. But, baby, just because you have a phobia or just because you're anxious or have anxiety around a certain thing, don't make that your child's thing. Please. Please.
might explain why we seem more likely to fear certain potentially dangerous animals like snakes, or why fears of heights or closed-in spaces are relatively common. It's probably true that our more wary ancestors who had the sense to stay away from cliff edges and hissing serpents were more likely to live another day and pass along their genes, so this might explain why those fears can persist, and why even people who live in places without poisonous snakes would still fear snakes anyway. And then you got the genetics and the brain chemistry to consider. Research has shown, for example, that identical twins, those eternal test subjects, are more likely to develop similar phobias even if they're raised apart. Some researchers have detected 17 different genes that seem to be expressed with various anxiety disorders, so it may be that some folks are just naturally more anxious than others, and they might pass on that quality to their kids. And of course, individual brains have a lot to say about how they process anxiety. Physiologically, people who experience panic attacks, generalized anxiety, or obsessive compulsions show over-arousal in the areas of the brain that deal with impulse control and habitual behaviors. Now, we don't know whether these irregularities cause the disorder or caused by it, but again, it reinforces the truism that everything that is psychological is simultaneously biological. And that holds true for many other psychological disorders we'll talk about in the coming weeks, many of which have names that you've also heard being misused in the past. Today, you
My boy, what you been over there eating? Like been eating some peanuts or something?
learned what defines an anxiety disorder, as well as the symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and
Yeah, man. Don't. Please, if you can, don't pass it on to your kids, man. Let your kids experience their own life. And also be open to them helping you get over your fears. For sure. Cause I tried to help her learn how to swim, But it's just a thing that she also has to just get over mentally, which she's aware of. And we always had those type of conversations and stuff at the time. And that's even like dogs. You know what I'm saying? Like now we've had dogs, mind you. And to a certain level, she can deal. But then certain other levels, no. And especially if you don't know the dog. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Definitely make a difference. But if you can, just be open. That's all I want to say. Y'all have a good one.